Dear audience, welcome to a fresh edition of Business Miles, my podcast that looks under the hood of business travel. Today I have with me Steve Reynolds, a serial entrepreneur and a technology thought leader within the business travel space. Steve has been in the business travel space since the 1990s and has also worked with eminent companies, recently at Embers as well. Steve, our audience would love to know about your journey and how you got into the business travel world.
Thanks, Anish, and thanks for inviting me to the podcast. Just a quick summary of kind of my career in travel. My first entrepreneurial venture was a company called CTI in Houston, Texas. I was a consultant with Ernst& Winnie at the time. The travel agency really just got tired of paying what they thought was an exorbitant hourly rate and asked if we wanted to start a company. And so I, with several others, came on board. We started CTI, which really developed some of the first desktop reporting solutions within corporate travel. We were taking back office data, doing a bunch of massaging and augmentation, and then popping it on the PC so that you could create your own reports. And it was kind of the first of its kind. It's called LifeSite. The agency and that company were acquired by American Express back in the day. They were very impressed with our tech, and so they decided that that was going to become the product suite for American Express. So I worked for Amex for a couple of years, flying around the globe, doing demos and sales pitches and God knows whatever else. When a gentleman by the name of Danny Hood had left Amex, started World Travel Partners, and called me up and said, "Steve, do you want to do it again?" I said, "All right, worked out well last time. Let's do it again." So I came to World Travel Partners, which is now BCD, and we created a company, I helped start up a company with a couple other guys called TTG, or Travel Technologies Group. That really dominated the market in a lot of places. We had the first mid-office service bureau. We created one of the first online booking tools. We had some point of sale solutions, Southwest Direct, Sierra Screen Highlighter, and we then merged it with a couple of other entities, and we created a company called TRX, which was really born out of providing automated fulfillment for Expedia. And so took off. The company did extremely well. We IPO'd in 2003. I left TRX shortly thereafter. Did another startup, sort of in the BPO space, called CTD Systems. Sold that to Sutherland Global, and then kind of did consulting. But they came up with the idea for TripBam in 2013, something like that, 2014, and TripBam was just wildly successful. Partnered up with some really smart developers. And we built something pretty unique and disruptive within the corporate travel space around hotel rate monitoring, reshopping, auditing, benchmarking, and so on. And then I sold that company to Embers in July of 23. I've been the chief strategy officer with Embers up for the past 2 years, and I recently left Embers about a week ago. So that's the story.
It's a very interesting story. And, I quite like the part on how you got into the technology space within business travel. It reminds me often of how sometimes a bunch of things we do can get us into places that we didn't initially think of. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was luck, kismet, whatever you want to call it, but yeah, I was out just in grad school. I started my career really at TI as a programmer, and I thought I'd made a huge mistake. I was bored out of my mind just doing large company development. But fortunately, I stuck with it. I went and got an MBA at A&M, and then I was hired by Ernst & Young right out of grad school, and my first assignment was a travel agency, which was just luck. I mean, it could have been an insurance company, it could have been an oil and gas, who knows, and who knows where my career would have gone. But it was in corporate travel. Corporate travel, can get pretty exciting at times. And it has gone through a lot of disruption over the years, with the advent of the internet and online booking and now AI. just pushing it in a lot of different directions.
Absolutely. And audience, that's going to be the focus of our discussion today with Steve. Steve has had the opportunity to see the business travel world from a lot of different angles and viewpoints. Steve, to begin with, let me first share with you where most of our audience comes from. They typically come from mid-sized companies that often have between 100 to 1,000 employees, right? Sometimes between 50 to about 200 travelers. Now, what I've seen very commonly is many of these companies, nearly 40% of these companies, don't have an online booking tool or a self-booking tool.
Hmm.
They're often going to consumer websites, the airline and the hotel websites to book. Given how you've seen the business travel world shift, do you think this way of booking from consumer websites is about to change for these companies?
Yeah, I do. But I've been thinking it was going to change for the past couple of decades. And it's just been very slow. It all comes down to how do I get the booking, so that I can make sure that the money is going to be spent in the right way. And how do I capture that booking so I can provide the appropriate level of duty of care to know where my travelers are in case something happens? If those two problems get solved, I think a lot of especially small and mid-sized companies will start to consider, booking direct as a viable alternative versus, sort of requiring their travelers book through the TMC. But to be honest, no one has really cracked that nut yet. As far as how do I capture the booking directly from the suppliers across the entire global enterprise in such a way, that I can answer those two questions. So it's in somewhat, the data is held by the travel agency within the GDS, and at times, because these systems can be kind of legacy, it's hard to get that data out of them. They're very proprietary, they're very isolated, they're very closed, although, whatever you want to call it. And, just getting that data out of a GDS can be expensive and tricky and time consuming and whatever else you want to call it. But I keep hoping that someday we may be able to figure out how to capture these bookings for business travel directly from airline websites and hotel and car rental websites, so that we can kind of do it yourself, so to speak, and then
Yeah,
use the travel agency for what I think they're really good at is complex international white glove VIP type support. So one
absolutely.
minute. Yep.
Now, some of the new age travel softwares are able to achieve most of what these consumer websites can, right? Provide a modern travel booking experience, yet being able to capture the travel data and also enable duty of care solutions, right? However, that's not for every company or every mid-sized company out there. Do you think there is a sweet spot when a company should definitely consider implementing a modern travel software?
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a bundled solution where it's travel, it's expense, it's card, kind of all combined, and you sort of hit the easy button on a solution that you can implement, then I'm definitely looking for, and I don't know if I want to call it a travel company or an expense company or what, but that seems to be something that's very much resonating in the small and mid-sized corporate market, in the States and also globally. I just want one vendor that can provide an integrated suite of products where 1 + 1 = 3, so to speak. If I book my travel through whatever compliant, whether that be direct or whatever, if I can capture that data, feed that along with receipt data, into my expense report. So the expense report is fairly automated, if not 100% automated. And then the approval process can be automated as long as it stays within the boundaries. And if I book it on the card data is automatically fed in. And I have all these data points that kind of come together and magically create this expense report so I can avoid all the manual entry. Then it just makes it so much easier for the traveler at the end of the day. So probably a bit of a panacea, but I don't know why it's not possible to make that happen.
Well, I'm sure you were trying to make that happen when you were at Embers, and I know a bunch of others, including Italite, are trying to do the same, right? To make this integrated travel expense payments view come together.
Yeah,
Now,
a lot of competition in the space. So there's probably a dozen companies now, sort of, kind of chasing the same vision, I believe. And
yeah.
I think whoever gets this first, is going to just have a pretty significant advantage, over the rest by actually delivering on the promise that this is something we've been talking about for decades.
Now, on the topic of integration, I know you mentioned that this makes the traveler's life significantly easier, right? Book in one place, that data flows into the reimbursement module, right? Captures data from your card spends as well, and very easily goes into the company systems. But in your view, what are the other advantages of an integrated travel expense and payments offering?
I think it's just having a much more holistic perspective on your travel spend from a lot of different ways. So, from negotiating suppliers to make sure you're really looking at all the volume and all the spend. So, for example, with a hotel, it's not just room nights, it's spend within the restaurant, the parking, all the other stuff that your travelers tend to buy when they're there. From a duty of care perspective, having all the details to know exactly where your traveler is, not just what plane they flew into or what hotel they were in last night. I kind of really need to know based on receipt data and other things, where they currently are at the moment, to be able to track them down. The detail that's provided just gives me a lot greater insights into what seat is being booked, what type of room is being purchased, what type of meal, and all that, so that I can decide, is it compliant or not. It just goes, it's just a long list of potential value they provided. Did I get my contracted negotiated rate? Did I get my free breakfast at the hotel? I need to refund this thing. It says, is it fully refundable? It's just, there's just a lot of insights captured by combining all these data sets together. But, at the end of the day, that's just not an easy task. It can be a little tricky.
Absolutely. Now, on one point, the duty of care point, many of these mid sized and small companies don't always travel internationally. So they often travel within the states. Have you come across companies, you know, who want to provide duty of care or track their travelers even when they are traveling within the country?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need to know where your travelers are, kind of, to as much level as you can, whether in country, out of country, whatever it might be. If they're traveling on behalf of the company. Um, I saw an interesting company at GBTA where they were tracking it down to the individual card swipe. So I knew within a matter of 30 minutes to an hour if the guy had just checked into a hotel, if they had just swiped it at a restaurant or a coffee shop, and I could actually pinpoint where those travelers are throughout the journey. The other way is just using your mobile phone. For a while, that was kind of the hot item, but I think that kind of got stepped onto sort of some data privacy and security issues. So not many companies use that. But yeah, most companies should and do track their travelers as best they can, but a lot of it is dependent upon booking through the TMC today because that's the easy way to get to the data.
Got it. Got it. Now, on the topic of travel software, right, as you mentioned, or integrated travel and expense software, as you mentioned, this leads to making the life easier for travelers, right, and significant improvement in their booking and reimbursement journey. In my experience, I've seen that, you know, onboarding a tool is easy, but getting it adopted is harder. In, since you've seen corporate travel for a while, why do you think there is resistance at the start? And then how do companies typically overcome it?
You have to have something in it for the traveler. And, I don't think paying them to do the right thing is the right thing to do. The kind of the positive incentive, whatever sort of approach. I think it's make my life easier. So if I purchase through the compliant path and I purchase using the card and I do the right thing according to travel policy, why do I have to wait until my manager approves this thing? 30 days later, for me to get paid. And why do I have to go capture all these receipts, scan them all in, feed them into this expense system when half of it's already fed in electronically anyway?
Right.
And you can match up the credit card transaction with the actual booking so that the receipt's kind of, pointless. It's really all about, did you do the right thing, and not do something crazy? And if so, you can avoid, the manual data entry problem that everybody hates. And so then you get, if you can reduce the time on task significantly. I mean, a lot of a lot of employees spend their Friday afternoon filling out expense reports, and it takes a couple of hours. If I can get rid of that and I can give every employee a couple hours back per week, I mean, the savings is just could be really, really significant, especially at high travel companies like consulting firms and the like. So I just don't know why that hasn't happened. And I think it's much more possible in a small and mid-sized company than in a large company today. And I think there's just a lot of providers, assuming companies like Adelaide, that are doing the best they can to kind of make that happen.
Yeah. And I think, you've made a bunch of very important points there. I think one of that is also, you know, taking the message of easier work to employees. In my experience, companies don't always invest time when they launch a new tool, right? Usually, hey, here's a new tool, come use it.
Right.
That approach, right? It's a forceful approach, and I think in today's days and times, that's probably not a good approach. The other point you made was also very, very good, right? If I booked everything as per, the company guideline, then why should I need to take an approval again for reimbursement?
Exactly.
Right. So, I've seen that, I wouldn't say it is a broken process, but I would say it's a suboptimal process.
It's just a
So,
legacy process.
yeah,
When these transactions were all, I mean, what just still befuddles me is I take an electronic transaction, I get a printed receipt, and now I'm paper. And then what do? I go scan it to get it back to a digital transaction.
yeah,
Makes absolutely no sense. So we just need to skip that whole paper process and have that traction flow all the way through and then match it up with what was actually booked, was actually spent, whatever else I can to determine, did the right thing happen here? Did we spend
yeah,
the company money wisely?
yeah,
Another perspective is like around just, did I spend it wisely? Did these travelers, if you just fly out there and meet with a client and fly back, that's one thing. But if I fly out and I meet with 2 or 3 customers in a single day, you just get a lot more bang for your buck. So
yeah,
that's, back to those insights. If I can collect all that, merge it together, and have some really good analytics, I can see which travelers are most efficient, and spending money wisely. This pullback during COVID, I think swung too far, in not traveling. I want my employees to travel. I want them to meet in person with customers, but I also want it to be efficient, and not be wasteful. So,
So, reminds me of this work I did for a company that had about 50 people on the road. These were salespeople who were going out to meet customers and prospects and selling to them. When we, thanks to the data that this company had available, we were able to put down that the most successful person in their team, or the most successful AE in their team, made about 80 trips a year.
oh,
The
wow.
second most successful person made 150 trips a year.
Yeah,
Right. So, they use that to go back to, the second person and say, hey, maybe if you travel less, you'll close more. Not to mention all of the additional cost of travel. So very interesting perspectives that insights and data in a structured way can unlock.
yeah,
So that clearly is a big benefit of, bringing on a travel software, right? Where
yeah,
it's easy to extract data and, integrate data. I
yeah. I mean,
move to my, yeah, sorry,
yeah, just
go
to
ahead.
your point, looking at the different types of travelers. If the most successful, travels 80 and the second most is 150, is the second person less efficient, or is the first person with 80 just significantly more efficient in some way? And kind of looking at if the first person is just sort of, okay, I'm traveling to see a client to help close a deal. I'm also aggressively looking at other prospects and other customers in the area. And I'm just diligently, scheduling my day, fly in that
Yeah,
night, spend all day in meetings, either red eye back or, come back the next morning, whatever. Um, you know, my gut tells me that's probably a lot more effective than just traveling less, right?
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
getting really efficient in how you spend your time.
Absolutely. And those are the questions that data can answer or can help you answer in many ways.
Yeah, it's almost like not so much the travel spend, but how many in-person meetings did you actually have? And
Yeah,
does in-person translate to sales? Which I believe it
yeah,
does every time. Relationships is what sells, especially to the larger market. But also, I think to mid and small as well, it applies. It's just a bit more difficult. But if you could figure out a way to meet with 10 clients rather than just one per trip, you'll just have dramatically different results or better results.
yeah. That's a great point. And I also think, every AE can sell better if they meet the customer in person.
Yeah.
It always works, right? Human connections always do.
Yeah, it should, unless the salesperson's just in the wrong role. But most AEs are good at relationships, right? So
Yeah.
they're likable and whatever. That's why they're hired. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, companies should leverage that as much as possible. And, what we found is that if we were qualifying a deal and the probability of close, if we'd actually met with the client in person, that probably had the biggest impact of anything else we could be doing. We could have 20 Zoom calls or whatever, versus one in person meeting, and that one in person meeting would make all the difference.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Now, I know, Steve, you mentioned about, how technology and now AI is shaping the business travel world, right? Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. How do you see AI changing the game in business travel? What
Yeah,
kind of ways is AI already being used in this space?
yeah. At first it came out to just I could have a conversation, with what perceived as a travel agent, text to speech, speech to text, whatever. It's sort of a chat, and just making that more efficient. But where I struggle a lot is I'm seeing a lot of companies just sort of rebranding their tech as AI. It's really not any different. They're not using what I would consider real, AI and the LLMs and such. It's just kind of marketing more than anything. But the few company and the other challenge is it's very expensive, takes a huge amount of data and a significant amount of computing to make this stuff really work. And when I've used the agentic AI solutions where, look, I want to go travel to a destination on these dates, when it comes back with something that's just right on point, it's
Right.
almost magical, right? It knew
Yeah.
that I always fly American. I'm out of Dallas. It knows that I'm not going to take the lowest cost option, Spirit or Frontier, because I don't have to. It knows, like I'm a Marriott guy, I'm going to stay at the Marriott typical blah, 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 right? If it's got enough data to feed it. And when it comes back with the right option, it's like, holy crap, this thing is awesome. The problem is when it doesn't come back with the right option, you then have to go down the rabbit hole of trying to change it and get exactly what you need. And there's just a lot of variation at a trip level
Yeah.
for business travelers. I'm training a conference. It's going to be different. It's a group or meeting kind of spend. It's meeting multiple clients throughout the day. I can't fly out at the same time. This time I need to be budget conscious and take a connection to save a couple $100 versus last time I had plenty of budget and I could fly direct. There's just so many variables that creep into the transaction. That's where it kind of falls over, and everybody tells me, look, we can solve those problems. And I'm sure over the years you can if you have enough data to feed the
Yeah.
model, but then I got to go through years of frustration to do that, and I'm not going to do it. So you get kind of this chicken and egg problem a little bit to really get it to where you want it to be. But there's some really good companies working on it, spending a lot of money. Skylink, out of the states, seems to be a bit of a front runner, on the AI agentic model solutions. And there's a host of others as well. Another one is PredictX on the analytics side is applying a lot of kind of interesting AI to data models and such to come up with insights, into
Yeah.
where you can actually save some spend. And there's some new startups that are coming up that are still kind of in the skunk works mode, but you're going to see a lot of them between now and year end, sort of, make some headway.
Got it. Interestingly, at Italite, we are also deploying agentic AI on two specific use cases. Use case number one is insights, because as Steve pointed out, insights from your travel and reimbursement data can genuinely add value to your business and revenue. The other place is also collecting hotel folios. Now, I know there are several industries where travel is for a customer. And in these industries, it's the customer that is reimbursing for the travel. But very often, the company that is, whose employees are traveling, they need to get the hotel folio across to the client to get reimbursed.
Yep.
Right. So, we have several such customers in our customer book. And what we've been able to successfully do for them is use agentic AI to pull folios back from the hotels.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, I think applying AI to OCR or to read, paper receipts or hotel folio data is a huge benefit for the traveler. I mean, if you make me type in room rate and tax and fees and all that stuff, just forget it. I'm just not going to do it. So if you need that level of detail, that's one way to get it.
So absolutely, that is what we are trying to build as well, or in fact, we've built as well. So
Good.
we don't collect the physical folio. This agent reaches out to hotels to get the electronic folio back, and then it extracts the electronic folio from the email, uses the OCR technology to read data, and then fills a spreadsheet for the company. I think the question on the build out is, doing this with several hotel chains is harder. Your time to market increases. And therefore, the approach we took was, how do we create a solution that scales easily
Yeah,
without having to go integrate multiple APIs, right? Yeah. It probably in the end state will be a API plus, email agentic solution,
yeah,
right? So you cover 80% of the demand through API integrations, and for the remaining 20%, you have emails.
yeah,
So very interesting how AI is shaping different companies and how they are using agentic AI to make work easier. As
yeah.
Steve pointed out, audience, maybe agentic AI or agents to book business travel need a lot of evolution before they can they can reach an acceptable level for users. But I think there are other areas like insights and work processes where agents could definitely make your life easy in 2025.
What's also interesting is the financials behind it. I believe right now, if you use, sort of agentic AI to, let's say, refund a ticket, your cost to do that is potentially higher than if you
Yeah,
actually talk to an agent. And then you got to go through that kind of quality chasm of getting it to where it actually works consistently and doing the right thing, 95% plus, of the time. That's going to be a big hurdle. Like this is
yeah,
expensive and the quality isn't as good as if I talk to a person. Why am I doing this? I don't want to do this anymore. I want to talk to a person, kind of a thing. So that's going to be a tough one for companies like yourself to kind of push it, to that automated solution over time, without causing a lot of, just individual frustration.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, Steve, this has been a super interesting conversation. We've just crossed the half an hour mark, so I will throw maybe one final question at you. Right? If there is a company out there today, a mid-market company today, that's evaluating a travel software, right? What would your advice to them be?
I think first you have to decide, do you want the bundled solution? Do you want a travel agency, online booking, expense, and card all together? Because that's going to really narrow the number of clients, or number of suppliers that you have to kind of RFP, or look at, and so on. I think assuming you want to go down that path, which a mid company will probably will, just make sure you really get strong references from their customers to kind of validate that they're actually delivering on the promise. Make sure that it can handle your company for the next several years from a geographic perspective, as well as from, do you need VIP support, lots of international travel? Every company is a little bit different, in how they're serviced, so to speak.
Right.
And then thirdly, are they also applying technology, fairly aggressively to kind of get to stay ahead of the curve, right? Being innovative and coming up with new products and services. Do they have a reputation for innovation? And I think the biggest, struggle for these companies is that they're trying to be all things. They're trying to be high service, they're trying to be low cost, and they're trying to be innovative. And that's not really possible. You can't do all that. And at the level, you kind of have to pick one or two, to really, establish yourself in the market. So just find out when you're dealing with a company, which one are they? Are they the innovation company, the service company, or the cost company? And just, if you are deciding to go down that path, realizing that's what you're signing up for, right?
Right.
So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. That's just some initial thoughts.
These are very useful thoughts, and I'm sure a bunch of members in our audience would benefit from these thoughts. Steve, once again, thank you for being a part of Business Miles and having this very, very enriching conversation. Thank you and have a great day.
You too, Anish. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you, audience. I'll be back with the next edition of Business Miles very soon. Till then, adios.